Welcome to another edition of Homegrown Table Talk. I'm Anna Hamlin, and today we're going to be talking about agriculture education. I'm joined by Danny Herring with the South Dakota FFA, as well as Regina Bakley from Pennington County 4-H, and then Bobby Joe, who is a former ag teacher in the Rapid City area schools. So first question I have for you guys is, I know that you all represent different organizations, so how do you all come and work together?
Pennington County has used the local FFA chapters in a few different ways. We work together on some youth day events, so hippology, horse quiz bowl, that way to kind of bring them all together on the same playing field for competitions, and also for volunteers. They've been really great to work with when we're hosting different events. They'll bring a whole group of kids and they're always so willing to come help out and volunteer, and so just building those connections within Rapid City has been very beneficial for the 4-H program.
And what about on your side?
So we hosted our state FFA convention here in Rapid City in 2021, and we relied very heavily on the Pennington County 4-H. Also volunteers like Bobby Joe, she helped us out a lot, trying to coordinate things that we needed done. So we, organizations like ours can't survive without volunteers and cooperation, and I would say all of our organizations and all of Team Ag Ed, as we refer to it, has to work together.
For sure. And then in the schools, how do teachers and classroom environments support organizations and students that are a part of FFA or 4-H?
So a lot of times our students that come to us have at least a background with agriculture, or we hope that they do, and a lot of times that comes from the 4-H realm, and then as we get into the high school, they are able to be involved in FFA, and so really just showing them the opportunities available to them in the classroom and how they can get involved with different organizations related to agriculture.
And here in Pennington County and across the state of South Dakota, like you said, there's a lot of kids that they grew up involved in agriculture. But how do you bring in the youth that are involved already as they grow up in that environment, and then also maybe the kids that are interested, but they didn't grow up in that setting?
We see that a lot in Rapid City within our programs, whether it's anything in agriculture, or a lot of our other current technical education areas, and so really just exposing them to the opportunities they have available and making sure they know what's available for them and how they can get involved. And so as an ag teacher, you tend to become very close with the local 4-H leaders as well as our state FFA association, and showing them the opportunities and how to get involved in those opportunities.
Yeah, I would say that previous to my job that I do now, I was a teacher for 10 years in Wall, so still in Pennington County. Yeah. And some of my most active kids that I had were kids that were not traditional ag kids. Right. But they really enjoyed the leadership development and getting to learn how to do job interviews and learn how to meets judge, and just things that they never thought they would be involved in. So that's actually really cool about our organizations, is that you don't necessarily have to come from an ag background, yeah, but we'll take whoever wants to come be involved.
I think there's just kind of the message that's been sent out over the years that 4-H is an agriculture-based program, right, but there's a lot more to it. So one thing we've talked about a lot in Pennington County is trying to meet youth where they're at. So walking into a classroom full of urban youth and saying, this is a cow-calf operation and this is why it's beneficial, probably isn't really going to stick like you'd expect it to. So bringing it down to their level, or more related to something that they're interested in, is something we've been trying to figure out how to do and tie them into it that way, because they might not even realize that agriculture is where that project area came from. So
what are some of the things besides agriculture that you do in 4-H?
So project area wise, visual arts is actually something really huge for us. Mm-hmm. Visual arts, photography, our shooting sports programs are huge. There's a lot more to 4-H than just the ag side of things, yeah, but I think being able to combine the two and teach youth about the agriculture side of things is something we're really pushing towards at this point in Pennington County.
And then for FFA, at least I noticed, it's not all direct agriculture relation in that regard too. So what else do you guys have?
One of our biggest programs the last 4 or 5 years has been our Agri-Science Fair program, mm-hmm, and that we're very competitive at the national level in South Dakota in that, and it's not necessarily all of it traditional ag things. There's social systems, there's power structure and technical systems, there's animal and plants and stuff like that too, but we've seen a growth in that program exponentially over the last 4 to 5 years. And then we also have a whole event that's leadership development events that happen in the fall. So we have, public speaking and parliamentary procedure and job interview and ag sales and things like that. So kids really can get they can do those soft skills and train in those soft skills that translate to any area, not just agriculture, which I think is something that is great about FFA and being involved in our programs.
Yeah, and then in the schools too, are there parts of your curriculum that aren't necessarily, in an ag class, are there parts of your curriculum that aren't directly farm and ranch related?
Absolutely. So especially within the Rapid City area schools, we really look at, we obviously have our traditional areas such as animal science and so forth, but we do a lot in our non-traditional, such as natural resources, wildlife and fisheries. Again, those leadership like Danny was talking about and Regina was talking about, there's definitely those opportunities for students. And really just, again, those soft skills we are finding in education, kids need a lot more help in a lot of those areas. And so as the adults in the room, helping them just to be a good leader and know how to be successful. And then even going back to the basics of having your own garden and being able to support, bringing in extra things to help your family and tie it back to agriculture is great.
I had, kids that they really loved to, make things on their Cricut.
Yeah.
And so we, let them do things like that if they wanted to. And we also, I did a lot of DIY projects with kids because I had a very small shop.
Right.
And so we had to kind of get creative with stuff. And, so yeah, you're interested in photography. Let's make a DIY project about photography. Or, it's just getting those kids to be passionate about something and giving them an avenue to be able to, do the things that they like to do too.
Yeah, creativity is a huge part of agriculture, but so is technology. So that's what we'll be talking about coming up next, the development of technology and the development of agriculture happening together. Welcome back. Technology, as we know, is ever changing, and so is agriculture, and some of that is due to those developing technologies. So particularly with youth programs and maybe even just agriculture as a whole, what new technology and developments have you guys seen in your careers as teachers?
I think most recently, some of the big things that we've seen is, drones and precision ag and those kinds of things that are getting more and more prevalent and common, even, in small town South Dakota.
Right.
There's, auto-steer tractors are pretty much the norm for most, big operations and things like that. And, even if you just think about when I was in high school, even just technology, we used to have a computer lab at our school,
right.
and now
now
every kid has a device, and they have a computer in their pocket and they can use it, and I think it's something that some people struggle with, but using technology to your advantage is something that's really important, especially in agriculture, because ag has a tendency to sometimes be a little bit behind the curve in some of those things. So making sure that kids are learning skills that are actually going to be applicable to jobs when they get out of high school and they get out of any post-secondary school that they do. So.
Well, I think over the last couple of years, especially in our classrooms, just our general classrooms, is like Danny had mentioned, just having the computers at their fingertips, and you're having a discussion or figuring out, going back and forth on a particular topic, and having students be able to do the research right then, to be able to cite those sources and know where the information is coming from, all the way up to curriculum, and actually being able to, there's almost in some school districts, there's no more such thing as snow days because they have the technology at their fingertips and are able to, to even continue that education piece even when they're not in the classroom. And so being able to take students outside to do different activities and the technology that comes with it, the labs that you can do based on the technology, the data that you can run and be able to prove and look through. It's forever evolving, and to the point where sometimes by the time you get something implemented, it's updated and you have to look at how to re-implement the newest and greatest even in the last couple of years.
And you mentioned drones, which I think every kid thinks drones are cool.
Yeah.
So is technology helping you guys get more kids involved in ag too? How can you use that?
It definitely doesn't hurt. You know, if you can tell a kid, we have some programs in South Dakota, some ag programs that, you know, they purchase sets of drones for the classrooms and they use them for, you know, teaching labs and doing things like that. And it is a draw for some of those kids. I had a student in Wall, who did his entire senior project with a drone. And learned how to edit the video and you know, fly the drone on his grandpa's farm and mapped the whole farm out like they'd never been able to do before. And this was not a traditional ag kid. He was in my program, but you know, he wasn't really involved, but he loved it. And you know, he does that on the side now. So I just think that, you know, whenever you can get that technology into kids' hands, and if we're the avenue that helps them do that, I think that's great.
Are you seeing some similar things in 4-H?
I would say so. It's more on the robotics side versus the drones. Yeah. Robotics has grown a lot in South Dakota 4-H over the last few years, and it's continuing to grow. And so that's definitely something where you have a group of kids that may not otherwise be interested in the program that join specifically because of that. So it does help your program grow for sure.
And I think that we want to get as much youth involved as possible, right? So are there other tools with technology, like maybe social media, that have helped you guys keep kids active in their programs?
Yeah, I think that social media has been, you know, it's a great addition to a lot of our programs and ag education. You know, you can reach thousands and thousands of people, you know, with one post, and that, which is a great tool. And I also think that part of being an educator, any kind of an educator, is teaching kids how to use that technology for good. And to better themselves, and you know, proper, you know, social media etiquette and doing some things like that. So I think that that's an important piece of kind of the education too. But I would say that, you know, we have an intern right now at our FFA association who does all of our social media for us, and she worked so hard at state convention, and she did such a great job. I cannot do that, and I am totally okay with that because she's passionate about it and she's very, very good at it. And you know, that's something that she can do to give back to the FFA. So those are some good tools that we have.
I would say social media wise for 4-H. So every 5 years we come out with our Vision 20, whatever plan it is, so Vision 2025. And one thing South Dakota 4-H as a whole is focusing on is trying to do more youth-focused communication. So maybe a little less Facebook, a little bit more Instagram, trying to meet kids where they're at. And so social media is a huge tool. Whether it's the education portion or just simply promotion of your program, social media is huge, especially with the generation that we're working with right now.
And what about in schools?
I think teachers have really done a good job of trying to implement technology, you know, making different TikToks to go along to learn different pieces of information, and just really on the technology side, just bringing and implementing it, rather than no phones allowed. How can we utilize the phones in our classroom to help students move on to that next step or in moving into something new?
And as far as the development of agriculture goes, like we talked about, technology is just so quickly developing. Are there any things besides drones and you said robotics that you guys have really seen changing the industry over the past 5 years?
I think the amount of just tech in everything. I mean, the apps that you can get for agriculture now, I mean, just blows my mind. There's so many of them. And you can develop an app for anything, and anybody can do it. And I think also a lot of the implements that, you know, they're basically a running computer. You know, a tractor is basically just a big computer now. Yeah. So it's, you know, that's a lot of technology to, you know, to put out for agriculture. So.
Like Bobby Joe had kind of mentioned the curriculum. The amount of curriculum you can find based on agriculture just because of the advancements in technology is insane. Just about any topic you want, jump on Google, do some research, and you can find any ag topic that you'd hope to teach on. So.
That's incredible. So next, I just want to talk with you guys finally in our last bit about why it's important to involve youth in agriculture throughout their childhood and their early adulthood, and then how we can keep them involved even after they've graduated. So make sure to join us. Lastly, I'd like to talk with you guys about how we're getting our youth involved and then how we can just continue to do that over the years. So what are some techniques that you guys have been using as educators to just keep kiddos involved and just rope them in the first place?
I think one of the big things within the classroom is just showing them all the opportunities available to them. Even though they might not have a direct connection to traditional agriculture, they might find things such as the leadership side or the sewing side, or just the learning about the different aspects that go into it. And that's one thing that I was not a traditional ag student, so just the fact of coming from a non-traditional side and showing that there's a lot more to agriculture than farming. I mean, obviously that's the main thing, but showing that there's a lot of other opportunities out there.
In 4-H, I'm very thankful that it's a very generational program.
Yeah.
A lot of kids that join, their parents were in 4-H, their grandparents were in 4-H, so it makes it a lot easier for us to get those kids initially into the program. It's a little less outreach for us.
Right, and they saw mom do it,
Right.
so they think it's cool or whatever,
Right.
or their older sister did it and they want to be like that.
That's how I got involved, is my older sisters were in it, and of course once somebody starts, you just keep going all the way down the line and never really quit. So.
Yeah. That's similar for FFA, right?
Yeah, I taught in a small school where ag was pretty much the only elective that you had for a choice. I mean, a couple others, but so getting kids in the door wasn't necessarily the problem because they basically all took it anyway, but it was keeping them there and keeping them interested that was always kind of a challenge. But I think it's super important that, as more and more people move off the farm or out of traditional ag, production agriculture, it's really important for kids to know or learn where the food comes from. Yeah. And we have a really unique ability to be able to teach that in a good way to generations of kids who are 4 to 5 generations themselves removed from the farm. So I think that's probably one of the most important things that ag programs do is help kids understand where their food comes from and where their clothes come from and how important agriculture is to this country, even if they're not traditionally involved in production ag.
So what do you guys do once you have the students? How do you retain them through high school?
I think encouraging them to keep switching project areas, to keep finding things that interest them. Right. So if they start out in something, lose interest in it, always give them more opportunities to try something else in order for them to gain that interest again and want to continue to participate in the program.
Yeah, in school?
I would say the career exploration piece is really big. Showing students, you leave high school, you go into this area, whether it's a 2-year program, a 4-year program, or right into the workforce, and kind of what the outcome is. Do you want to be over here doing this the rest of your life, or do you want to be over here, and how that interjects, and it really there's no set way, and just showing them that you can be successful and you can really make a good living in a lot of different areas.
What about FFA? Is there a specific technique to really maintaining those kids that have been in it for generations?
I think that just the amount of different programs we have, kind of similar to 4-H, that kids can do just about anything and they don't have to do it forever. They can pick something new, they can pick something different, they can learn something new. So I think that is a good way to keep kids in and involved in FFA throughout their high school career.
What are some of the different fields that aren't necessarily farming, ranching? What are things that aren't just those two direct, exact ag pathways that they can still take within agriculture?
In a rural state like South Dakota, pretty much every job is connected to ag in some way. I mean, even if you just work at a grocery store, you're still, part of the ag world. But, if you think about things like getting a business degree and going and being an ag lender, working for farm credit services, you can go do those things that are non-ag related, but having the ag piece, I think, makes you a little bit more marketable. Then there's other, there's research and technology and app development and all kinds of things that aren't necessarily in ag, but have very close ties to ag.
Yeah, and like you mentioned robotics earlier, that's a field that somebody interested in programming or computers and mechanics could go into and still be a huge asset to the ag industry.
We try to focus on areas for our older youth that are something that could eventually be a career. Focusing on something they're interested in. So robotics, you could take that so much further, go to school for engineering and go on from there. The photography being huge, that's a great opportunity for them to go out and start their own business, and giving the tools they need to be successful in that is something we work towards.
And as a teacher, how do you prepare kids for all of these different kinds of careers, all somehow tying back to the subject of agriculture?
It's definitely not, I mean, it's challenging. You bring in a lot of different viewpoints, but I think, again, it goes back to that career exploration. And students, whether they realize it or not, they've been getting that agricultural education since elementary school. Whether it's learning about the fruits and vegetables on their plate or, doing history lessons related to agriculture, even just right up into the high school level where they specifically take a class where they're interested in. They're getting that exploration and helping them, as teachers, hopefully helping them to find an area that fits their interests.
And then the last thing I wanted to touch on quickly is just where you guys each see the future of youth in agriculture going. We can start with you, Danny.
Sure. Well, I think as far as FFA is concerned, we're seeing growth in our membership every single year, which is really encouraging for the future of agriculture and agriculture education. So I just think that, keeping with the youth and keeping, on the cutting edge of a lot of things that they like to do is going to continue. It's going to let us be successful in recruiting youth and continue to grow our membership.
And what about with 4-H?
I think we're going to continue to see growth in the 4-H program. It'll be a lot more urban kids, of course, because of people moving further and further away from the farms or ranching lifestyles, but trying to still find those ways to meet youth where they're at and teach them the sides of agriculture when we have that opportunity. That's what we're going to work to do.
And ag education is becoming even more popular. We are continually starting new programs and always looking to add them into our local school districts. So it's going to continue to grow. Kids have the interest, and there's the technology, there's the curriculum, there's the resources out there to help them be successful.
Yeah, I suppose the best thing about constantly changing technology and all of those kinds of things, it just keeps fueling growth within the industry, and then that trickles down to the youth, right? It's all super exciting. I'm so excited to watch you guys continue to grow and just continue to maintain that growth too as the industry changes and develops in and of itself. So thank you guys so much for joining us.
Tailor rise just as well as any man.